Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone. In week 8, we will learn about two main topics. One is geography of innovation and the next is multinational enterprises and internationalization of research and development. We'll first talk about this topic on multinational enterprises. In this particular case, what we will do, we will have two main sections. First section will talk about what do you mean by foreign direct investment, what is the role of multinational enterprises in determining that investment, and also what are the key theories which are behind explanation of the foreign direct investment. Now, why we are doing that is students who have come from an international economics background would have been well aware of these theories, but for others, in order to give them a brief overview of these theories, I will be talking about them. Uh, Please note that the discussion will rather be a brief and a kind of an overview. You are encouraged to read more about them and they are available in any standard international economics books. Now, to first talk about what we have seen in the 20th century is a very rapid economic globalization. But what do you mean by globalization? It is essentially an increasing interdependence of the countries. That means now they depend on each other for various products, whether they are for consumption or for production. Two major trends that has been noticed in the 21st century are related to first the globalization of consumption and then the globalization of production. When we talk about globalization of consumption, what we mean is that the variety of products which are available nowadays for the consumers are indeed available not only in one geography, rather you will find that similar kind of products are available across the nations. So whether you talk about international brands like Coca-Cola, Pepsi and many other, let us say, sports good products, etc., they are no longer limited to the territory of one country. Their markets have expanded. Many times you will find a very similar kind of a product across the countries. The products are no longer limited also to the brands which come from the developed countries only. In fact, in the last 2 decades of 21st century, we have also noticed that the new brands have come up from the emerging economies. So that is what is about the globalization of consumption. Globalization of production was another phenomenon which started with the mid of 20th century and then it reached its peak around the last decade of 20th century. And here what we have realized is something like the production process itself and the different components which are related to a brand. In globalization of production, what you notice is that the product which is now being consumed is not something which has come from a single geography. In fact, if you open any of the gadgets that you must be using, maybe a laptop or a desktop, you will find that the different components, including the screen, the motherboard which you may have, the keyboard, the mouse which will be there with the desktop, is in fact sourced from different suppliers. Not only that it is being sourced from different suppliers, these suppliers are also not located within one country. It is possible that the suppliers actually come from various other countries. One example, very important example, comes from Boeing 777, which is a commercial jetliner. Now, if you look at this commercial jetliner, what you'll find that there are around 8 Japanese suppliers who make different parts, including the doors, wings, fuselage, etc. There are other suppliers from Singapore who provide the nose landing gear. Moreover, if 3 suppliers from Italy actually provide the wing flaps. So the data shows that around 30% of the 777 commercial jetliner indeed is sourced from the different foreign companies. So that is what you mean by the globalization of production. That is whereby you have the production process rather being distributed across various countries. The suppliers are providing different components to the final product and you will notice that it is not coming from a single producer. Very interesting question arises that this kind of a globalization of production, the trend which we have noticed in case of globalization of production, is also something which has been witnessed with respect to research and development related activities. Now we have seen earlier when we talk about the innovation activities of the companies, that how there are different companies which are involved in research and development, and we also saw the list of top 2500 companies which are doing R&D across the world in the different research areas. So the question is, what is the specific framework or the way these companies are now involved in research and development? Is it that the similar kind of a trend with respect to the separation of the different processes of research and development has also been noticed with respect to the new to the age products? Now the question is also, if you go back to our discussion on the way we looked at the establishment of the large labs during the first half of the 20th century, which was in alignment with the establishment of the big production houses at that point of a time. So is it that the similar kind of a trend is which is being witnessed in the production is also being noticed in research and development? That is one key question we will try to answer. However, before we do that, as I told earlier, we will look at the various definitions of foreign direct investment and also the theories. Now, this discussion in that case will provide an important context to the students who will be interested in undertaking research in this particular area. Now, just to clarify what we have a different type of sourcing. Now, suppose a firm may source products from a different firm. They might do it within the country. So that is what an example of an outsourcing. If it's sourced from its another unit, then definitely it is doing it in-house. On the other hand, this kind of an outsourcing can be done from outside the country, and that is the context of the offshoring. So we have to understand that this is how the firms would be now bringing in the different components that might finally be assembled in one place and then eventually might lead to the final product. So let us talk about what do you mean by foreign direct investment and how it is related to a multinational enterprise. So let us talk about the definition as such. So we say that FDI occurs when a firm invests directly in facilities or produce a product in the foreign country. Once a firm undertakes FDI, it becomes a multinational enterprise. Please note that before undertaking investment in any other economy, the company always has an option to also serve the other country by means of exporting their product to that country. So, but here where the focus is in terms of being in multinational enterprise, then the investment has to take place in other country. There are three major components of the foreign direct investment, including equity, reinvested earnings, and other capital. Now, with respect to the definitions, you will find that various international agencies which also collect data with respect to the international investments that come from one country and go into another, they have their own set of information or you can say definitions that they have come up with in order to collect that information. So let us look at the UNCTAD definition, which talks about FDI being as an investment which involves a long-term relationship. So that becomes a hallmark of this particular definition, that the firm which is now undertaking that kind of an investment has indeed a lasting interest in the investment. They are also interested in exerting the control over that particular entity. And what is that entity? Essentially, in one economy, in an enterprise, resident in an economy in the other than that of the foreign direct investment. So the investment which now undertakes place, it is from in the different country as to the original resident of the foreign direct investors. In that case, you can also view that it is a kind of a balance of payment concept, because when the investment occurs, you have to see it as terms of a major component of your capital account, where the investment will come, and if it goes back or an outward investment happens, then that also has to be taken care of. Now, IMF and OECD has also retained the very basic core of the definition which comes from UNCTAD is with respect to obtaining a lasting interest by the resident entity. So in both the cases, the lasting interest becomes very important. It is not something which is coming in one day and then going away on the next day. There are certain you can say there are certain long-term plans and interests that are aligned with the specific investment which is now made by a resident entity of one economy into the another economy. The lasting interest in this case implies the existence of a long-term relationship between the direct investor and the enterprise, and most importantly, a significant degree of influence on the management. That brings us to the question of control once again. So the idea here is that there is also a significant influence which is now exerted by the management as such. As per OECD, the primary distinguishing feature of direct investment is a significant influence that gives investor an effective voice in management. So having a control, having an effective voice, having to have a say in the management is something which is of much significance here. For the foreign controlled sector, the primary distinguishing feature is the control. Who controls, who takes the decision, who says what to be done and what not to be done. Moving forward, if you look at this OECD benchmark definition, once you have understood this idea that what you are looking for is a lasting interest, you are also looking for a significant influence in the operations, decision making in an enterprises. Now, how do you operationalize it in order to capture the actual investments being made? That operationalization occurs by definition, which is now talking about the ownership of 10% or more of the voting power in an enterprise, in an economy by an investor in another economy is an evidence of such relationship. So now when you have to collect statistics related to foreign direct investment which are related to the cross-border transactions, how would you go about? You have to understand that there has to be an entity which is making an investment in the another economy, and we have two guiding posts. What are those? There should be a lasting interest in the enterprise and also a significant degree of control. And how do you translate that into now, let us say something which you can calculate? So that is done through a definition of ownership, and that is of the 10% or more voting power. So then again, if you look at it from an economy's point of view, so this is from an enterprise point of view, which is now investing around 10% and having a significant control in terms of the say what happens within the enterprise. Now, when you think from a point of view of a balance of payment position of a particular country, then you will see that FDI statistics will include three major components. First is definitely the financial flow, which will capture the debt and equity investment related to the parties in the specific period. So if a company, let us say A, has made an investment, so how much investment has come in the form of equity, how much debt that has been owned by them, that will be an important component. Then another would be an income. Suppose this entity is now operating in the country, what kind of an income is being earned by them in a particular financial year, and then also how much of that has been retained within the country. Then the positions, which are actually the value of the accumulated over a period of a time, how much of the accumulation has happened in terms of the investment. That will ensure what do you mean by the stock of FDI. So these are the three things which have been covered here. Inflow of equity capital from abroad, reinvested earnings of FDI enterprises, acquisition of going enterprises by foreign investors. So here if you look at it, the inflow, it adds to the country's capital, including plant and machinery, and this is referred to as a greenfield investment. Here the idea is, suppose a company decides that now they want to go to an Indian market, which is very thriving right now. So they come to the country, they identify a plant, they say that, okay, we will put up a plant here, and then they undertake the entire investment in the plant, machinery, and start the production as such. Most of the host countries, they would prefer the greenfield investment. Why? Because in the greenfield investment, you are bringing a lot of experience of the foreign companies. They make also net addition to the productive capacity, which is very of much significance and importance to the developing economies. If they are looking at the new investments, then clearly foreign direct investment in that sense, which is now investing through this greenfield investment and contributing to the productive capacities becomes very important. Moreover, like I said earlier, when now the company is establishing a plant, they are sourcing machineries, they have to design the particular plant in a way, they might have to call consultants. So then you will find that they would also hire some Indian nationals, say for example the host country is India. Now these Indian nationals and Indian skilled labor will have a conversation with those experts. They will also learn. They will learn that about technology. They will learn about the management skill, and that is the intangibles which comes along with the foreign investment, either through the technology, know-how, or the managerial skills. Second, we look at reinvested earnings of the foreign direct investment. That is very straightforward. Having to a function, suppose they have now continuing the function, the plant has come up, the production is going on, there are sales, and of course now we have a long history in the country of our open market, so clearly we have much companies like that. So they would have profits, they would be retaining some of them, they would be throwing them back into more investments within the country. So that will become a part of the reinvested earnings of the foreign direct investment enterprises. Then there are acquisitions of the enterprises by the foreign investment. Now this can be seen in contrast with the first case where we have looked at the greenfield investment. There what we saw that the company may be interested in coming to a particular country. They will go there, identify a plot, make the investment, get engaged into the production as such. Here, instead of doing that, the companies might engage in maybe an acquisition, merger, or a takeover. So if there are certain companies which are already persisting, they are there, and as a result, instead of doing everything on their own from the scratch, they would rather merge with them or take over them, and then as the process will take into consideration the brownfield investments. So here, acquiring and merging can be of a minority stake. They would rather merge them, the Indian entity in the case, into their own entity. So like 10 to 49% of the interest, that would be of a minority stake. Majority stake will be 50 to 99 and full would be around 100. So what are the advantages of this? First of all, clearly it is very vast. And it is very fast, and it is much more easier as compared to maybe doing everything from the scratch. The second is that suppose you're thinking from a point of view of a foreign company which now wants to enter into another country. The existing companies may have much more information and idea about the working of that particular country. They may have some valuable strategic assets. For example, they may have some distribution channels. They may already be owning some, plants, or they might be already owning some patents for that matter. So then, by going through this channel, through a brownfield investment, a company would be able to have an access to these strategic assets. There might be a reason as to why now they are being taken over in that sense. Might be they were not very efficient or were not doing very well, and as a result what you find is that they get this kind of an investment for a foreign partner, and as a result they might then have to be acquired by them. So in this sense, it can lead to increase the efficiency of the acquired fund. Why? Because the person who is now acquiring them, they once again has a technological skill, or they have a managerial skill, they know things better, and they have also resources. As a result, you will find that some of these companies which might be taken over, they would be now the resources that they own can now be used much more efficiently, just because of the investment that has come through, and the investment, the kind of intangible that has been brought in by the investment.